Hello everyone, I'm Chang. Today I will introduce all my work, including my mirror board and process book. Let's start with my cover. The illustration on the cover is derived from my visual experiment on the concept of folding, which I will explain later. For me, this project has been a breakthrough. It pushed me to dive into the realm of philosophy, a field I've always been interested in but never explored deeply. I approach it in an innovative, interpretable, and designer way, deconstructing and reconstructing concepts. At the beginning of this course, I felt a bit puzzled. Each session seemed separated, from categorizing snacks to developing critical vocabulary. However, upon reflecting after class, I realized they were interconnected and progressive. The lunch taxonomy method was a turning point. Humans are naturally inclined to categorize, so I use this concept of taxonomy as a hidden thread to organize my process book. We started with snack categorization, moving from conventional to unconventional approaches, linking them to materials. This exercise in categorizing snacks acted as a metaphor. The true goal was to prepare for next class. We conducted a group game based on ideal cards, who determines the sequence and who defines its importance. This led us to a deeper exploration of critical thinking, and this exercise is also used the taxonomy to organize all the critical cards. Next, we transitioned to researching archives, which inherently rely on taxonomy in social and historical context. The indexing, labeling, and organizational structures of archives reflect the thought process of the individuals categorizing the materials. Derrida wrote in Archive Fever, "To archive is a primal impulse. Archives are structures of interpretation and organization. With this fascination for archives and a yearning for existence, projecting one's imagination onto the archive, we explored one or two archives as research subjects. For the physical one, I visited the BNT archive and engaged in discussion with staff about archive management. My focus shifted from the content of the archive to its organizational structure. I realized I was not concentrating on the materials themselves, but on their profiles, their modes of presentation, a context constructed by the organizer. How is it organized? These endless boxes in the archive, how do they store truth, record authority? This shift in perspective began with those boxes, leading me to focus more on the space of the archive or the site while discourse operates. The archive originates from a Greek vocabulary which refers a private residence, a place for explanation and classification. Today it might manifest as an invisible space. I then developed an interest in a digital one. I chose left notes in a library, an archive documenting personal traces left in books. The space it creates fosters a more accessible context. These aimless personal traces became the starting point for my project. Through visual dialogues, Zine workshops, and peer assessments, I engaged in design practice that intertwined with theoretical exploration, shaping my thought process. Research through making became key, while interactions with visual objects themselves became instinctive tools for graphic designers. In visual interpretations, I balanced the signifyings and the logical arrangement. These aren't fully formed ideas, like fragments of research from the first stage, subtly influenced my work in visual form. Also, as we made, researched, learned, and evaluated, the process resembled the double diamond framework's defined stage. By continually organizing information through making, the contours of our understanding grew increasingly clear. I began to learn to ask questions. As viewers, how do we reconstruct the identities of strangers through these anonymous notes? I devoted much attention to the concepts of privacy and anonymity, discovering a one-way supervision prison as a metaphor to explore more about the actions under anonymity. However, as my research deepened, I found these notes gradually far away from the concept of archives. So I started to shift my focus, returning to the specialty of archives that intrigued me the most. I realized these personal notes, embedded within the book's context, were like the folds which Deleuze described, possessing a hidden inner side and an exposed outside. Initially, I concentrated on experimenting with folds and found that every fold creates folded surfaces and creases, which are replicas of the original fold. A fold is a distinction carrying the past action of folding and the future possibilities of unfolding. Folding is a dynamic process. The transformation between the inside and the outside corresponds to appearance and disappearance. When we turn a page, these notes suddenly appear. A brief interlude, a momentary surprise as the page turns. I sought a more concrete landing point for these abstract perceptions and conclusions, and then discovered Graham Island, a small island that appeared for only 5 months. It was like a mystery. It emerged in July 1831 and disappeared underwater in December of the same year. As a real geographical phenomenon, Graham Island's rapid appearance and disappearance were astonishing. It seemed as if its emergence and disappearance had no transition, merely a reversal of the inner and outer surfaces. Disappearance does not equal to non-existence. The marks on the seafloor serve as physical evidence, traces of its presence. It also exists in another dimension as a literary fiction, being the prototype for Treasure Island, a setting for fictional adventures. Its disappearance in reality is more like a folding into some intellectual space in preparation for its future appearance. When the main characters of the Treasure Island finish their treasure hunt, the traces of the island lose their charm. It resembles a paradox. The closer you come to understand and find out its appearance, the nearer you are to its disappearance. This is my conceptual map, describing the reversible relationship between appearance and disappearance. I try to use visual diagram to make the abstract and complicated ideas to easy form. The disappearance after loss is not true vanishing. It folds into the future for a new emergence. Deleuze defines this as a state of becoming. For research and experiment, throughout this process, I conducted 2 rounds of research on the original archives, from information collection to conceptual focus, 2 rounds of research into fold theory, progressing from surface-level understanding to deeper exploration, and 3 visual and behavioral experiments on folding. I shifted from obsessing over the effects of folds to analyzing the dynamic actions of folding. Through observing folding and unfolding, I attempted to create several forms of embedded folds, smaller folds sharing the same surface with larger folds. I also explore how the number of folds affects the overall form, the impact of enclosure, and the infinite reversals and boundaries changes caused by fold. I further investigated projection problem in mathematics. In the visual experiments, I created orderly and interlaced visual systems, ultimately guiding the outcome of a poetic film. Although constrained by time, every test and outcome try their best to narrate in a literary and rhetorical manner the layered concepts of fiction and reality, folding and unfolding. This aimed to evoke an emotional resonance in the audience, allowing understanding beyond theoretical comprehension. For reflection and outcome, finally, I reflected on my exploration process, divided into 2 parts. The first one is evaluating my actions, and the second one is reflecting on the concept within social and cultural contexts. I traced my actions through chart, reflecting and assessing my exploratory process, including some records of mistaken research branches. I established the link between appearance, disappearance, and fold theory, and chose Graham Island as a metaphor to concretize this exploration. Ultimately, I responded to the original archive. The appearance and disappearance of these notes when flipping through pages are also an embedded fold. They are traces of reality embedded in the fictional context of a book, as well as individual folds within collective commonality, reflecting a person's genuine and private attributes. It seems we can never grasp the folded surface, while appearance and disappearance reverse. We can only accept it in the becoming state between them, feeling wistful yet calmly embracing the next cycle of appearance and disappearance. Appearance and disappearance are folds, reversible two sides of the same phenomenon.